and welcome everyone to a new episode of Media Coffee brought to you by PR Newswire, which is a Cision brand. Media Coffee brings you insight from leading journalists and media organizations across the globe. I'm your host, Nariman. Please join me in welcoming Manjula Subhash, a marketing and corporate communication strategy consultant and startup mentor. Hi, Manjula. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here today. And it's really nice to have the virtual coffee with you, Nariman. Thank you so much.
I had a look at your LinkedIn profile, and you have an impressive career working as a communication professional within the tech industry. So can you walk us through your journey and career in general?
Sure. So I'm basically from the northern part of India, but I grew up in the southern part of India in Bangalore. We came to Bangalore because my dad served the Indian Army. So most of my schooling and college has happened in Bangalore. So I started working in Bangalore itself with media industry. I worked with some of the large brands in advertising industry and event management companies for a few years. And then from there, I moved into the IT industry. With the IT industry, I moved into the division of marketing and corporate communication. And I served 20 plus years in the IT sector. And in 2015, I started off my own entrepreneurship again, similar to what I was doing before. That is marketing and corporate communication. But now I'm working for the startups, MSMEs, or bootstrap organizations where I'm helping them as an outsourced chief marketing officer.
So we obviously have this background in working in advertising agencies and then moving to the IT industry, working again as a marketing and communication professional. So what can you tell us about the media landscape in India? Specifically, what are the most important points that international companies need to think about or be aware of while they're dealing with the media in the country?
So, India, ever since I have started working, I have seen the media industry evolve a lot, over the period. So, today the media and entertainment industry is close to 2.3 trillion rupees, and it's growing, it's evolving. It's evolving between different divisions. That is, you have the televisions, you have the digital platforms, you have the print. And nowadays you have the influencers, which is like every house has one reporter sitting who's reporting some news or the other. So the industry is really big, and with close to 500 colleges that are providing degrees in mass communication, that means students who pass out of these colleges are actually going to be serving the media and entertainment industry. It's a big future that we see. The other thing that we have, which is very interesting about India, is that we are a large country with a lot of states, and every state has its own language. Some states have more than one language. So the media has also become very vernacular. That means it's also very localized. In local languages, also, you find a lot of media houses that are growing today in India. Now, coming to how global organizations, can leverage, the international organizations can leverage Indian media. One, because we are a large country and we all believe in media. We all love media, Every household, there is the news time that, we invest when we are watching TV, having dinner. So it's really good to be part of such a big, ecosystem of media for international organizations. And today, because everything is digital, there is no country, there are no boundaries, right? So even if an American organization gets featured in an Indian media and the media has actually published the story on the digital platform, it is still available for the whole world to view, right? It's not very specific to India. So I think for the size that we are, for the different cultures that we are, global organizations must leverage Indian media. And what should they be cautious about when they are, engaging with Indian media is one, they need to understand that we all have very distributed cultures because of being such a large country with so many states. They have to ensure that they fit into the culture of local culture of every media house that they are talking to. At the same time, India is global. We do understand the global landscape as well. So you will find a lot of global people who have moved from global locations working in media in the Indian organizations as well. So I don't think it's going to be that difficult, but I think cultural sensitivity is something that we need to keep in mind.
That's actually really interesting and important as well because I've heard it before. Obviously, being mindful of the cultural differences, because again, India, as you mentioned, is a huge country. However, just a question. Obviously, or assume with big companies, it might be easier to adapt and do their research before sending their press releases or communication to whatever region that they're targeting. What would you say for like maybe a smaller or a medium-sized company with a limited budget? Um, Obviously they might not obviously, but like they might not have the budget to recruit, for example, a PR agency or a local PR agency.
Now, coming to your question on cost conscious, what are the cost conscious ways of leveraging media, how to come into media, how to release a press release, or how to say your company's success story into media, right? That's your question that you asked. I think within the whole 360 degree of marketing and communication, I feel that media is something that is the most cost conscious way of starting off, kickstarting your go to market strategy. So there are a lot of startups that I mentor, and they often come up with this thing. They say that, we want to reach some heights within our organization. We want to take our business to some level and then start engaging with media. And I tell them that, the day you have an idea, that is the day you have a story to tell to media, right? The day you have actually registered and started your organization, that is the story you need to take to media. So you don't have to really wait for really big milestones to achieve within your organization to create compelling stories. Every story, when these startups sit in front of me and they talk about the passion that they started their organization with, I say, why don't you take the same passion, put it in a press release, and release it? Then the question is the budget. We don't have the budget to do. So that's where I say, there are a lot of platforms like the PR Newswire. You don't really need a PR agency. You draft a press release, engage with the PR Newswire team. They edit it for you, and then they release it, and you get like, good amount of media hits for that particular news piece of yours. That is the beginning. Now, the challenge, what I see is when people also do press release, they do one press release and then they sit back and then they wait for the impact to happen. And I often tell them that, listen, leveraging PR or this particular industry is called public relations, right? You need to build relations with media. You need to build relations with the media, representatives. Only then you will start seeing the impact. And how will that happen is when you keep going back. How do you build relations? How am I building relations with you? I'm going to keep talking to you, talk about my day with you, catch up with you on coffee, talk about my challenges and all that. That means we become friends, right? We start sharing things with each other. So if you start looking at media that way, start building the relationship with media that way. Start telling them, every small little things, tell them. If you want to ask for help also, for example, there are a lot of startup companies, they're looking out for co-founders, but they're looking out for co-founders within a very closed community that they are part of. And I say, if you want to look out for a really good co-founder, why don't you just do a press release? For all you know, from the whole universe, the globe, you're going to find some co-founder that may come in, and that could be a great partnership that will happen for you. So that is something that I see challenging, that they do not have the knowledge. And some people like us should actually be out there talking to MSMEs and startups, telling them that, use PR. It's not very expensive. There are a lot of platforms available where you can start sharing your stories without actually engaging with a high cost PR agency. You could have PR executive, to help you do all that, but It is something that you can do within your budget and start slowly. Your branding actually gets started, the visibility gets started, and leadership profiling gets started from there. So.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thanks a lot for this. Since we're talking about press releases, I sometimes I think about removing this question because by now I've been doing this media coffee interviews for about 2 years now. And I always get like a similar answer to it. But I still like to ask it just in case there is something interesting. And usually there is always something interesting from the different journalists that I interview to say. But given your experience, do you think press releases are still important? Do you think media or journalists still look forward to receiving press releases from companies?
Yes. Understand that while we as organizations, the companies, the clients as organizations want media to share their news, then there is this media also sitting to find the news, right? They also need news to exist. If they are not going to have the pool of news coming in into them, it's going to be really difficult. And we know, coming from media background, we know that people are actually on the field, whether it is a war zone or whether it is, a volcano erupted somewhere, or, some disaster happened. There are media people out there on the field actually covering the news. But it's not possible for every media house to have that ecosystem of having media be present at every location of the world to cover news. So there are a lot of news companies, and they are fairly large news companies that are waiting for press releases because they need the stories. Without the stories, they how can they have their media if there are no stories, right? I mean, imagine a newspaper that comes to your house and it is blank. There are no stories on it, right? So you do need stories that will come in. Press releases are very important because press releases actually are not really drafted by a third person. Press releases are something that are drafted in-house, because having worked as a corporate communication person with the IT company, I know that we were the ones who used to draft the press release internally. We were the ones who would, come up with the compelling title for the press release. We were the ones who would ensure who is going to be the spokesperson getting quoted in the press release. And, what is the quote that that person is going to talk about. There used to be like multiple rounds of actually reviewing those quotes, right? It's not like we just write a press release and release it. It is a lot of work. When we write a press release, a lot of work goes in. And then, some companies also have the processes of having your press release vetted and validated by their legal team, by their, the PRO office, by their, CEO's office. It goes into a lot of approvals, and only then it goes into the media. So press releases are going to stay. They are going to exist because media cannot exist if they are not going to get stories from the business houses, from the organizations. Especially business media cannot exist if they don't have, where the news is going to come from. So it is very, very relevant, and it's going to be there. Yeah, we can look at the way the press releases are. That may change. So today
Mm,
we have the textual press release. Tomorrow we may have video bites, because today every digital platform can have video. Every news company wants to have a podcast like this. So the medium may change, but the news will keep coming in. The news will keep coming from the corporate, and it will keep coming into the organizations, media
yeah.
organ.
How important it is to follow up after sending a press release? Is there like an idea about like the timing or strategy to connect or contact the journalist after you communicated with him or sent him the press release?
If you are engaging with a PR agency, then I don't think you need to bother as an organization to follow up with the journalist or follow up with the media house on when the press release is coming out. Sometimes the media may take time in releasing the press release, because probably they don't want to release the press release as it is, but they want to create an exclusive story around it. They want more level of interaction with the spokesperson. They want to probably interview him one to one and then come up with a different news piece. So let's also understand this, that when we look at doing a press release from an organization and we are trying to have like 100 media houses feature us, uh, every media house also wants something different to talk about, right? And when we are publishing the same press release in all 100 media, there might be some medias that may want the story to be told in a different way. The same story, the same success story, or the same milestone story, or whatever the company wants to communicate, but in a different way. Probably they want to have a one-to-one interaction with the spokesperson, created more like a Q&A interaction, or probably have an authored article coming out, or probably have some research based article that they want to create out of that news piece that has come to them. Because every media wants different news, the same news can be told in a different way. That is what media also is looking out for.
So going back again to your previous experience, while I was reading your LinkedIn profile, there was something written about you being part of managing a crisis that happened in a company back in 2008, 2009. So can you just tell us a little bit about that experience and what were the key strategies that you used to manage such a media environment? And I think it probably was intense or challenging as well.
When you're working with a large organization and handling marketing and communication for a large organization, your typical role and responsibility is to actually help enable sales, right? So you are basically working in ensuring that your marketing efforts or your PR efforts, the communication efforts are more bringing leads into the sales organization. That's what marketing does. But when this company went through crisis, and we suddenly were, we suddenly were so confused about the future, that are we shutting down because the crisis were really big. Um, our role as marketing and communication completely changed. And this was that time the crisis was so big that every media was covering us, and every media was covering negative stories about us, the negative news was coming up. Now, always remember, you cannot undo the news, that has already come out in media. You can't undo it. Sorry. You can't undo the news when it comes out in media. I mean, even when media does any mistake, they can't undo it, right? What they can do at the most is say a sorry in the next issue, right? With a small column somewhere in the corner. But so when this company went through crisis and the media was so aggressive and aggressively talking negative about this organization, what we started doing was, now our focus moved from not really focusing so much on sales, but actually ensuring that now let's retain what we have. And what we have as an organization is that we have an existing customers that we are servicing, and then we also have existing employees that are working for us even in the times of crisis. We have to now ensure that these news do not demotivate either our clients or our existing employees, that they start leaving us, because by the end we have fallen sick. We are not dead yet, we are fallen sick, so we can be treated. So we as an organization, we're waiting that, okay, let's just remain sick and let's just find some buyer who can buy us out. But then if we die, if we start losing clients, and if we start losing employees, that means we are dying. We are a dying organization. Nobody is going to come and buy us out. So during the crisis, that's what happened. Now, what happened to the negative news that was coming out was, we started putting more and more positive news on top of that. Now, obviously, people will say that, when a company is going through crisis, what's so positive about it? No, there was positive. There were so many employees still coming to office, still logging in, still delivering projects. And we could create a lot of story within the campus, interview what is the morale of every employee, what do they feel. And trust me, when we started doing that, the feedback employees gave was that we don't really care about the crisis, because for us it's business as usual. So for us, we have to come to work, and we are coming to work, so we don't really care about what's happening to the organization till we are told, that you are not supposed to come to work from tomorrow. Till the time we are coming with all our energy. So there would be a team which would handle the internal communication to keep the morale of the employees boosted, that even if we are going through crisis and if there's so much of media that is talking negative about us, we would keep talking more and more internally to boost the morale of our employees. And similar things started happening with our existing clients. We don't want our existing clients to leave us, because we want the buying company to see that we have so many clients. So if we are worth being bought. So we had to ensure that every negative news that came out, we had to squash it by giving relevant information, showcasing that to what extent this news is true and to what extent it is false, and give the actual facts, and then keep going back. Every day we had newsletters going out to our customers, because every day the news was having some random things. Like I said, every newspaper wanted something new. And there was a time when people started creating their own news. They started creating their own news, because now there is the company is going through crisis, so nobody is really validating what is coming out of the organization. So people were just randomly talking anything that they wanted to talk in media. So we had to like literally squash it, go to the customers, telling them that no, this is not relevant, but this is the fact, and kept the company to that level, that then finally a big buyer came in and the company was bought, and it's still existing. It's still running very well, the company.
Going through a crisis, you're losing trust, your stakeholder trust, and obviously journalists are part of that stakeholders that you need to pay attention to. Did you feel like you needed to regain the journalist trust, the ones that, let's say, you've worked with for a long period of time, or some media outlets, and how did you do that?
So while, like rightly said, that when these crises happen, a lot of trust in the stakeholders is impacted, right? So the media is also one of the stakeholders there, along with your customers and your employees and your prospect customers, that you were targeting. Media also kind of becomes, they're also kind of confused about your organization. And yes, everybody wants the real news that is coming out, and everybody takes it up, everybody releases it, everybody goes out, and nobody wants to be left behind as a media house. When there is a crisis of an organization, everybody wants to talk about it. So what happened in those crises were that there was still the friendly media that was with us. And when we reached out to them and we said, listen, guys, we are not really wanting to shut down, and we really want to ensure that we still have our employees more motivated to come to work, and we really want our customers to stay, because the government of India has got involved now, and we are probably looking at a better approach moving forward to what will happen to the organization. We want to stay, we want to stay in the game. Then there was a lot of media who started actually coming in into our premises, even in the middle of the night. Like the BPO runs 24 bar 7, and there would be these media houses who would come in the middle of the night to shoot and ask the employees what their morale is when they're coming to work and all that stuff. And the outcome was really good, because employees were nobody was negative, nobody was scared, because we had done good amount of work in creating that culture in house to ensure that nobody really feels scared of the situation that we are in today. So we did get a lot of positive media also at that point of time. And good, all these companies, all the media houses that were negative at some point of time also started playing the positive stories about us, that now there is a company that is going through challenges, but they still have great stories coming out of it. So there is no bad media or there is no good media. It's all just one media. It's just, it depends on what story you're taking to them. How are you exciting them?
Yeah, as you mentioned, by the end of the day, it's public relations. It's about, the reputation that you've built and how you communicate with your stakeholders and how you regain their trust again after losing it for whatever reasons. So yeah, thank you so much for that. So, in today's fast-paced world, digital world actually, how do you think companies should prepare for PR crisis? And since you work with startups, how do you prepare them? What kind of strategies do you should they have in place? Sorry, what kind of strategies they should have in place to mitigate risk and protect themselves from different crises?
Here, when we talk about crisis, it's crisis that media can create, right? Because a company can have their own crisis of products and services also, where media cannot play a big role. I mean, if a company is going through crisis internally, then it's different. But yeah, how can you avoid crisis in media? I think the biggest thing is to be truthful to media about what you're trying to tell to media. If your numbers are small, but what you're doing is great, the product that you have built is out of the box. Today you may have only 5 customers, the number doesn't look big, but you think your product is a game changer. Be truthful to media, say this to media, that my product can be a game changer and I'm looking out for help. Asking for help from media is also something that startups should leverage. Ask media for help, tell them, we are a growing company, we have built a product with a lot of passion, or we've built our services with a lot of passion. Today we may be small, but we are looking at bigger growth. I think the collaboration of this relationship of public relations, the collaboration of media and brands, or media and companies coming together, is something that people should leverage. And they all will stand on being truthful to each other. If you do not have something in your organization and you're going to media and talking something about something that you have not even built, and you're just giving a false story out there, it can impact you so badly that tomorrow, whatever business you start, you would have lost your credibility. You would have lost your credibility in bringing proper investors into the organization. You would have lost your credibility with employees wanting to work for you, and credibility with customers wanting to, start using your product and services. So being truthful to media is something that's very important. And if you're asking for help, please don't feel shy about it. It's okay to ask media for help, because by the end, media is also there to build you, right? It is also one of the building brand building tools that is available. Media is for that. So it's okay to go and ask for media friends, that okay, I don't have a great story to say, but we've built something really exciting, and I think I can create some news around it. So would it be possible for you to feature it? You know, so that is something that I tell to the startups, that get your stories out. Every business, every idea that you have built, there is a story.
Thank you so much, Manjula. I really appreciate everything. I really appreciate our conversation today. And whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to our podcast, thank you so much for your support. Don't forget to follow us, subscribe, and send us any questions, feedback, or any comments that you have. Thank you.
Thank you.